A former Marcy correction officer pleaded guilty to manslaughter. He faces a 15-year sentence, and CBS6 has team coverage for you tonight. Nick Dubina is live outside the State Department of Corrections office in Albany, taking a look at what changes may be coming to the violent culture inside prisons. Tom Eschen is in studio tonight after he reached out to stakeholders about today's news. But first, let's send things over to Brianna Supardi, who's live in Oneida County. So, Bree, what can you tell us about today's guilty plea?
Lara, this marks a pivotal moment in a case that has drawn widespread attention and calls for systemic reform within our state's prison system. Christopher Walrath was one of 6 correction officers over at Marcy Correctional Facility charged with murder in the brutal beating death of Robert Brooks. That happened back in December, but today he's the first to accept a guilty plea. He pleaded guilty to the lesser crime of manslaughter in the first degree.
Mr. Walrath, how then do you plead to the second count, manslaughter in the first degree? Guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
With barely a word and no visible emotion, 36-year-old Christopher Walrath entered a guilty plea to first-degree manslaughter, admitting that he violently beat Robert Brooks, a handcuffed inmate at Marcy Correctional Facility, in December.
Did you put Robert Brooks in a chokehold against departmental policy and procedure?
Yes.
During that assault, did you strike Robert Brooks about his body?
Yes.
And did you intentionally strike him in his groin?
Yes.
Under the deal, he'll receive a 15-year sentence. If he had been convicted of second-degree murder, he could have faced life in prison.
Walrath was in the arsenal. He had nothing to do with the arrival of Mr. Brooks. He voluntarily got up from his post and joined in on the assaults.
Special Prosecutor William Fitzpatrick detailed how Brooks was assaulted in 3 different areas and how Walrath was part of it all.
There were 2 assaults immediately after he left the bus. A second assault at the arsenal, and that's when the chokehold took place. Then the third and final assault is the only assault that you have seen that's on the captured videotape.
Prosecutors say 3 other prison employees have reached plea deals, but Walrath was the first to formally accept a plea in the case.
I have to admit that the first thing I thought of was, well, Robert must have done something. He must have spit on them or disrespected them verbally or something. And the reality is he did nothing. It was welcome to Marcy.
The 36-year-old was one of 6 officers charged with murder in February. Another 3 charged with manslaughter, and 1 faced a single charge of evidence tampering.
The character of the agency and those who participated in this murder and other murders are emblematic of maybe higher leadership, and we need to take a look at how we do prisons in New York State.
Sentencing for him is set for August 4th. Robert Brooks' family did attend this hearing, but they declined to speak with the media. And however, this case isn't the only prison beating death case going through this very courthouse right now. Last month, 10 other officers were charged in connection to the prison beating death of 22-year-old Messiah Nantwi. He died at Mid-State Correctional, located right across the street from Marcy Correctional, back in March. 2 of those 10 officers charged with murder. And these 2 incidents raising serious questions about a culture of abuse within New York's prison system. And that's where we turn things over to CBS6's Nick Dubina, who's been digging into this issue. Nick, what do you got for us?
Hey, Bree, we are outside the Albany headquarters of the Department of Corrections. Now, Doc says it's working to implement several changes after you just said 2 inmates recently were beaten to death at 2 separate facilities.
In a statement to CBS6, the Department of Corrections says Monday's pleas are, quote, another step towards justice for Mr. Brooks and his family. It adds, Commissioner Martuscello has repeatedly condemned the actions of the staff that took part in the murder of Robert Brooks. He has vowed to not normalize those horrific acts and is working to make meaningful changes to the state's prison system.
And the reality is he did nothing. It was welcome to Marcy. You were trouble over at Mid-State, you're not going to be trouble here. And that's a problem that needs to be addressed now.
Special Prosecutor William Fitzpatrick says a violent culture among prison guards needs to change at Marcy Correctional and other state prisons.
Walrath was in the arsenal. He had nothing to do with the arrival of Mr. Brooks. He voluntarily got up from his post and joined in on the assaults. Sadly, just emblematic of a system and a problem that is persistent at that institution and perhaps others as well.
The Department of Corrections says Governor Hochul has committed around $418 million for body-worn and fixed cameras to reduce violence, increase accountability, and transparency. Other changes include a new public integrity division focused on allegations of staff misconduct. A law firm will review patterns and practices at Marcy, Mid-State, and other docks prisons following the Robert Brooks and Messiah Nantwi tragedies. 88 new body scanners for visitors, inmates, and staff, and a new screening process for mail to crack down on prison contraband.
This is a bigger problem where we need to start looking at the character of the agency, not the culture of the agency. A lot of people are talking about the culture. Culture is external, character is internal. It's how you respond in these moments. And what we've learned today, and we continue to learn, is that the character of the agency and those who participated in this murder and other murders are emblematic of maybe higher leadership, and we need to take a look at how we do prisons in New York State.
Now, I also spoke with NYSCOBA, the union that represents prison guards. Now, they're saying that the deal that was reached back in March with the union was just part of a step towards improvements, and they had nothing further to add today regarding these cases, only saying that if a CO is convicted of a crime, they are fired and then expelled from the union, adding no further comment. We are in Albany. I'm Nick Dubina, CBS6.
All right, Nick, thank you. So how did we get where we are now? Robert Brooks was arrested back in April of 2016, charged with attempted murder after stabbing the mother of his child, Diana Rivera. In February of 2017, he pleaded guilty to first-degree assault. On December 9th, Brooks was moved from Mohawk Correctional Facility to Marcy, where he was beaten while handcuffed inside of an infirmary exam room. More than a dozen staff members were present at some point during the attack. Early the next morning, Brooks was pronounced dead at Wynn Hospital in Utica. Fast forward to December 21st, when Governor Hochul demands 14 prison staff members be fired. Then on December 27th, the Attorney General releases body camera video of the beating. Suspensions for those officers began December 30th. On January 2nd, the AG recused her office from the investigation, appointing Onondaga County DA William Fitzpatrick as special prosecutor. An indictment was then unsealed February 20th, naming 10 correction officers, 6 of them charged with murder for Brooks's death, the other 4 manslaughter. And our team coverage continues now as reaction continues to come in. CBS6's Tom Eschen has reached out to many stakeholders about today's news. So, Tom, what are you hearing?
Thank you very much, Lara. Yeah, Nick a moment ago mentioned that corrections officer strike happening as this investigation was going on. That's why we brought together 6 individuals on all sides of this equation for that CBS6 roundtable back in March. That included advocates, a former CO, formerly incarcerated individuals, and lawmakers too. So I did reach out to some of those lawmakers today. State Senator Julia Salazar's legislation in response to Robert Brooks still pending in the Senate, but she did tell me today's news is an important development, but that they need to continue to demand that all of the involved officers and staff are fully prosecuted. I spoke with Thomas Gant today. That's him, a formerly incarcerated individual who has been at the Capitol calling for change. Here's his reaction.
Prison staff that murdered Robert Brooks are taking pleas because they know they're guilty. The entire nation saw this evidence and that they're being offered this cherry-picked plea deal is unlikely to be offered to anybody else that has been, ever has been accused of a brutal crime or murder like this.
Now, the calls for widespread change have grown since Brooks was killed, as you've heard. We've since learned ourselves an Albany man, Amik Nixon, was killed in Fishkill Correctional Facility in October. New tonight, his family now filing a lawsuit alleging more CO brutality. We spoke with their attorney.
There is reports from people who were in the facility that shortly before he died, he was beaten by correctional officers. So trying to get a better sense of the timeline could help determine whether the corrections officer's conduct is why he's dead.
She says they want records so an independent physician can review and determine what happened and potentially who did it. It was ruled a homicide in the autopsy. We go much deeper into this lawsuit, of which you'll only see on 6 tonight at 10 and more this week. Back to you, Lara.
All right, Tom, thanks. CBS6 has been following this story from the very beginning. You can stay up to date on the latest developments by downloading the CBS6 News app. It's available for free on the Apple App Store and Google Play.